Have you ever had the feeling that you are doing everything right, but still, nothing changes? It's as if your life were suspended in the air between silent attempts and frustrations, as if something invisible were between you and what you desire most. You set goals, write affirmations, visualize your dream every day, but time passes, and it seems to move away instead of getting closer. It's like chasing something that insists on slipping through the cracks of reality. Not because you are wrong, not because you are not capable, but because perhaps there is a key, a frequency, a rhythm that you have not yet accessed. This video is not a shortcut. It is not an empty promise. It is a profound invitation, an invitation to a 47-day journey that will not only teach you techniques, it will transform you from within. It will silence the noise of fear. It will reorganize the field of your mind, your body, your energy, and above all, it will reconnect you with the vibration of your own dream. Because what the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, but only when the heart is in the same place. Maybe you are tired of trying so hard, of keeping hope alive even when everything seems stagnant. Maybe you are here now because something inside you still believes, still calls, still beats with the strength of someone who knows that he was born for something greater than survival. This journey is born from the philosophy of Napoleon Hill, the man who listened with attentive ears to the secrets of more than 500 millionaires and transformed these truths into spiritual and mental principles. Hill didn't just talk about money. He talked about frequency, about purpose, about aligning thought and action with an invisible but real force, a force that shapes destinies. The truth is that profound changes don't happen overnight. They are born in commitment. They grow in silence. They flourish in repetition. And that is why we chose the 47-day cycle. Not because it is a magic number, but because it represents the time needed for the transformation to stop being an idea and become a reality in your body, in your energy field, in your mind. Studies show that new habits take between 45 and 66 days to become established. And here, 47 will be our symbol, a sacred time, a daily altar where you will meet your new self, even before it manifests itself on the outside. But you will not be alone. This journey also carries the vibration of W. Clement Stone, a disciple of Hill, who reminds us, a positive mental attitude is not superficial optimism. It is energy placed with faith and action every day, even when reality shows no signs. Especially when reality shows no signs. Over the next few hours, you will receive 20 pillars, 20 alignment codes, 20 vibrational maps that will support your 47-day journey. Each one of them was designed to touch something in you, a thought, an emotion, a resistance, and each one of them will bring a practice, a mantra, a dive, because change doesn't happen with information alone. It needs to be felt, embodied, lived. This video is more than just content. It's a field of resonance, a safe space to rediscover faith, direction, and strength that seemed lost. It was made to be listened to with an open heart, with presence, with reverence. You're not late. You're at the right time to start. Take a deep breath, let go of demands, and allow this path to unfold, one step at a time. Because when you walk with intention, the universe moves with you. Now, what really moves a human being? What really ignites the spark that transforms thought into reality? Let's start with the origin of everything. Not the plan, not the technique, but what pulses before any plan is born. The burning desire. Burning desire. There is a silent force that is born between the chest and the soul. It does not scream, but insists. It does not beg, but persists. It is like a memory that you have not yet experienced, but that you feel so clearly that it hurts. This is burning desire. It is not an ordinary desire. It is not wanting something just because it seems beautiful. It is something that burns inside even when the whole world seems cold. Maybe you have already felt this, a calling that you cannot explain. A vision that comes back to your thoughts before you go to sleep. A future that does not yet exist, but that already lives inside you. This is what Napoleon Hill talked about. Burning desire is the first seed, the sacred spark, the origin of all true manifestation. But there is something that few say. Desiring strongly does not mean suffering from its absence. Burning desire is not desperation, it is certainty. It does not need proof, it is proof itself. When this type of desire is born, it is no longer a question of if it will happen. The question changes. The question becomes, how can I become the kind of person who lives this? And this question changes everything. The problem is that many people confuse burning desire with anxiety. They get stuck in goals that no longer touch them. They insist on dreams that were not born from the soul, but from comparison. To truly desire something is to feel an internal alignment, as if each cell were saying, "This is yours," not because someone said so, not because it would be good, but because it is part of your path. This desire, when it is real, does not disappear with failures. On the contrary, each failure feeds it. Each failure refines it. Each disappointment strengthens it. Because it is not a whim, it is a summons from the soul. In the coming days, you will be called to listen to this desire more clearly, to name it without fear, to sustain it without haste. Because desire is the first step, but it is not enough on its own. It needs to become a daily presence. It needs to become a decision, a frequency, an action. And for that, you need faith, unwavering faith. Even when everything seems contrary, even when you feel alone on the path. That's where we're going now. Because without faith, desire becomes doubt. But with faith, desire becomes reality, unshakable faith. There are times when everything seems dark, when nothing that was visualized, written, or desired shows signs of happening. Times when reality screams the opposite of what the heart yearns for. And that's when most people give up, because the absence of signs is interpreted as failure. But Hill reminds us of something essential. What determines success is not external evidence. It's internal belief. It's the faith that remains even when everything seems empty. Unshakable faith is not the absence of doubt. It's the decision to continue even with it. It's choosing to believe not because there is evidence, but because there is a deep vibration that says that it is already real, even if it hasn't manifested yet. It's trusting in the invisible, not as an escape from reality, but as the most powerful reality that exists. This faith is not born of empty positive thinking. It is born from the experience of being with your own pain and still not giving up on your dream. It is born from the courage to persist even after failure. It is born from every morning when you get up and reaffirm, even in silence, "I will continue." True faith does not need to be shouted. It does not justify itself. It simply vibrates. That is why, when faith becomes stronger than fear, everything begins to change. Because the vibration of faith is expansive. It does not just sustain desire, it attracts it. What you sustain with faith begins to organize itself around you. People, situations, opportunities, ideas. Everything realigns with this certainty that lives in the invisible. But faith is not a straight line. It fluctuates. And that's okay. Having days of tiredness does not nullify your belief. Having moments of doubt does not destroy your journey. What keeps faith alive is the constant return to intention. It is knowing that even on days when your strength fails, the energy of your decision remains vibrating in the field. You do not need to be unshakable all the time. You just need to remember, whenever possible, that there is something greater guiding this process. Something that you may not understand now, but that is operating silently. It is in this trust that the true power of faith lies. Because when faith becomes a habit, the impossible begins to move. And it is in the silence of habit that autosuggestion begins to act. The mind begins to reprogram itself. Reality begins to bend. And it is to this invisible and powerful process that we are going now. Autosuggestion, autosuggestion. There is a voice inside you, a voice that speaks all the time, even when you are not consciously listening. This voice whispers ideas, reinforces beliefs, colors the world with meanings, and most importantly, it shapes your reality. Because everything you deeply believe, even if silently, ends up manifesting itself in some way. Autosuggestion is the art of choosing what this voice says. It is the subtle but powerful practice of reprogramming your subconscious through intentional repetition. Napoleon Hill understood that the subconscious does not distinguish truth from imagination. It accepts what is repeated with emotion as if it were fact. And so, the way you communicate with yourself is often more decisive than any external circumstance. How many times throughout your life have you internalized messages like, "It's not for me," "I can't do it," "This is too difficult"? These phrases, even when said innocently on the outside, take root in the invisible, and each root forms a pattern of deserving, of expectation, of result. But the good news is that these patterns can be transformed, not by magic, but by consciousness. When you begin to repeat, with intention and feeling, affirmations that reflect your new identity, you begin to realign the field of your life. It is not about repeating empty words. It is about feeling, with presence, the energy behind each phrase. It is about affirming until your body believes it, until your soul recognizes it. Autosuggestion is more than repeating phrases in front of the mirror. It is about nurturing an internal frequency. It is keeping alive an emotional image of your future. It is reminding yourself, several times a day, that you are becoming what is already yours in essence. It is not about pretending. It is about anticipating, living inside what has not yet arrived on the outside. And over time, this stops being an exercise. It becomes who you are. You do not just say that you are confident. You vibrate that confidence. You do not just affirm that you are capable. You act like someone who knows it. And the world responds. Autosuggestion creates a bridge between who you are and who you allow yourself to be. But for this bridge to be solid, it needs a foundation, and that foundation is knowledge. Because affirming without understanding is building in the dark. So now, let's dive into another fundamental pillar of this journey: specialized knowledge. Specialized knowledge. Dreaming is essential. Visualizing is powerful. Feeling is transformative. But there comes a time when the dream needs to descend from the subtle plane and touch the ground of reality. And that is when knowledge becomes sacred. Not just any knowledge, but the right knowledge. The knowledge that serves your purpose, that feeds your vision, that opens practical paths for the invisible to become concrete. Napoleon Hill understood this clearly. He said that knowledge in itself is not power. Power is knowledge that is organized and directed with purpose. Because there is no point in accumulating disconnected information. What transforms is not knowledge in itself. It is knowledge applied with intention. It is learning something today and finding a way to put it to the service of your dream tomorrow. Specialized knowledge is not necessarily academic. It can come from books, yes, but also from experiences, from observations, from deep silences. It is born from true curiosity, from the desire to understand what moves the world you want to inhabit. And the more you delve into this knowledge, the more your dream stops being abstract and becomes possible, tangible, strategically constructible. Many people get frustrated on the path to manifestation because they expect everything to happen just by the power of desire. But the universe, although deeply spiritual, is also practical. It moves based on laws, on energy, on coordinated action. And to act wisely, you need to understand the terrain, know the field, study the language of your purpose. This knowledge turns into clarity, and clarity reduces doubt. And when doubt loses strength, action gains space. You begin to move with more precision. You begin to perceive opportunities where, before you saw obstacles, you begin to trust the journey, not only because it is beautiful, but because you understand the steps you are taking. It is not about knowing everything. It is about knowing enough to feel safe moving forward. Because when you understand the path, even if you have not arrived yet, you no longer feel lost. And this vibrational security changes everything. It prepares you to access internal and external resources. It connects you with people, ideas, solutions. And perhaps, within this knowledge, something even more precious emerges: the freedom to imagine beyond what you already know. Because knowledge gives you a foundation, but it is creative imagination that opens doors to what does not yet exist. And this is the next step in our journey: creative imagination. Creative imagination. There is a space within you that knows no limits, a place where everything is possible, where reality has not yet been shaped and time is in no hurry. This space is imagination, and within it lies one of the greatest powers of human existence: the ability to create what does not yet exist, not as an escape, but as a seed, not as an illusion, but as an energetic construction of what will come. Napoleon Hill saw creative imagination as a direct bridge to infinite intelligence. He understood that every great achievement is born first in the mind, but not just as a random image, as a vision imbued with emotion, intention, and burning desire. It is through this aligned imagination that you begin to access solutions that logic alone cannot reach. Creative imagination is the art of feeling the future so truly that the present begins to move toward it. It is not just a mental exercise. It is a sensory experience. When you see yourself deeply living what you desire, your body responds, your field responds, your subconscious begins to act as if it were already real. And in a way, it already is. But there is a subtle and essential detail. Imagining is not controlling. It is not creating a mental movie and demanding that it happen exactly that way. Imagining, at this level, is trusting. It is allowing what you see inside to manifest in the most elevated way. Sometimes the dream comes true in another form, with other people, at another time, and that is okay. What matters is the vibration. It is the field that you sustain with this internal vision. Creative imagination also helps you to get out of the ordinary. It challenges patterns. It opens paths where there were previously blockages. It brings unexpected answers, solutions that were not in the plan, ideas that arise in silence, intuitions that reveal themselves in the midst of routine. Because when you activate this field, you begin to connect with more subtle levels of existence. And at these levels, everything already exists. Everything has already been created. It is just waiting for your yes. For this imagination to be truly creative, it needs to be anchored in action. It is not enough to visualize. You need to walk with what was visualized. And for this, the next pillar becomes vital, because every idea needs structure. Every dream needs direction. And it is in organized planning that the invisible begins to take shape in the visible. Organized planning, a dream without direction, can easily turn into frustration. Imagination, however powerful it may be, needs a foundation. It needs outlines, possible steps, an order that welcomes creative chaos. Because without structure, even the grandest visions are lost in time. And that's why organized planning is more than a habit. It's a spiritual manifestation of your commitment to what you want. Napoleon Hill understood that no wish is fulfilled by willpower alone. You have to create roots. You have to translate emotion into movement. Planning isn't about controlling everything. It's about keeping you aligned with what you want. It's a daily reminder that your dream isn't just a vague hope. It's a path you're building, day after day. But planning, in this context, isn't about being rigid. It's about creating flexible maps. It's about understanding that the road may change, but the destination remains the same. Organized planning allows you to move with clarity, even when your emotions are up and down. It gives you something to hold on to on days when doubts try to creep back in. It turns intentions into actions, desires into decisions. It silently says, I believe in this so much that I'm willing to organize my life around it. Many times, those who avoid planning are actually avoiding commitment. Because planning requires decision, it requires a kind of silent courage. The courage to say, I'm going to make this happen, even if it takes time, even if it requires adjustments, even if I have to start over a few times. And this courage in itself changes your frequency, because those who plan with their soul are already saying to the universe, I'm ready. Within this planning, there is a sacred space for listening, for constant review, for accepting mistakes as part of the process, and most importantly, for celebrating small victories. Because each step well taken, each action completed, each small advance is a reminder that you are moving, and movement generates energy. And energy, when directed, generates reality. But planning is only part of it. For the plan to come to life, you need to decide, and not just decide once, but cultivate the ability to decide firmly, clearly, truthfully, because life does not wait for eternal certainties. It moves with those who decide, even in the face of uncertainty. And it is to this turning point that we are now heading. Decision, decision. There is a silent point where everything changes. It is not when the dream is born, nor when the plan is drawn up. It is when you decide. Decision is the moment when desire ceases to be a possibility and becomes an assumed destiny. It does not matter if the road is still foggy. It does not matter if the resources are not yet clear. True decision does not wait for all the answers. It creates the space for the answers to emerge. Napoleon Hill observed that all the successful people he studied had something in common: the ability to make decisions quickly and change them slowly, if necessary. In contrast, those who failed often took too long to decide. And when they did decide, they allowed themselves to be influenced by any opposing opinion. This shows us that decision is not just a choice. It is a vibrational commitment to what you want to live. When you hesitate too much, your energy is scattered. When you decide, your energy aligns. The universe responds to clarity with movement. But this clarity is not arrogance. It is a type of courageous humility. The humility of accepting that you do not control everything, and the courage to follow through anyway. Decision is not born from the absence of fear. It is born from priority. It is when you choose to put your dream above doubt, when you choose to follow through on what you want, even if you have to walk slowly, even if no one understands, even if everything inside you is still in transition, because deep down, you already know. Not deciding is also a decision, and it is almost always the decision that keeps everything the same. When you decide, something organizes itself inside you. The body relaxes. The mind finds focus. The heart silences the noise. And what seemed distant begins to draw closer, because deciding is aligning all parts of your being with a single direction. It is bringing together your desire, your faith, your knowledge, your imagination, and your planning in a single internal phrase: I will. But deciding is not enough if there is no follow-through, because even the most profound decision will be tested. Difficult days will come, obstacles, old doubts disguised as truths. And in these days, what will sustain the path will not be enthusiasm. It will be persistence, the ability to continue even when everything seems to say otherwise. And it is with this quiet but indestructible strength that we continue now. Persistence. Persistence. There is a secret beauty in continuing, in getting up again, even without applause, in moving forward, even when everything seems immobile. Persistence is not stubbornness. It is not blind insistence. It is fidelity to what you feel is true, even when the results have not yet arrived. It is a type of faith that walks with its feet on the ground, that respects the time of things, but does not give up on them. Napoleon Hill said that many give up just a few steps away from achieving something, because the process is sometimes too silent, too slow, too invisible. But it is precisely in this invisible that the transformation is happening. Persistence is not just repeating actions. It is remaining vibrating at the frequency of your dream, even when the world seems to say no. It means staying true to what you have decided, even when your mind wants to negotiate. Persistence transforms you before it even transforms the results. It develops patience, resilience, and discernment. It separates fleeting desire from deep calling, because only that which truly matters survives the journey of waiting. And in this active waiting, you become stronger. You learn to move with less anxiety and more intention. But persistence also means knowing when to adjust, when to take a deep breath and refine your plan, when to be silent and listen to your heart again. It is not about always knocking on the same door. It is about staying on the path, even if the landscape changes. Persistence is a continuous presence. It is remembering every day why you started. It is trusting that each effort, even the smallest, is building something beyond what you can see now. And this trust becomes even stronger when you do not walk alone. When you connect with minds and hearts that share the same frequency, because no one grows in isolation, no one sustains a dream with only their own energy. And that is why the next pillar is so essential: the power of the mastermind, the invisible force that arises when aligned consciousnesses meet, the power of the mastermind. There are encounters that are not casual, connections that arise as a response to what you vibrate and not what you seek. People who, when they enter your life, bring not only advice, but a silent elevation of your inner state. Napoleon Hill called this force the mastermind, a harmonious union of two or more minds that, when connected with purpose, create a third mind, a superior intelligence, a collective energy capable of accelerating everything. The mastermind is not just a strategic alliance, it is a vibrational expansion. When you join with someone who shares the same purpose, the same ethics, the same faith, something multiplies. You no longer carry your dreams alone. Your energy is strengthened. Your vision is validated. Your field of action expands. And this field has the power to create. But this type of connection requires alignment. It is not about quantity. It is about quality. The true mastermind is formed by people who do not compete with each other, but rather drive each other, who do not drain energy, but inspire movement, who know how to listen, guide, welcome, and above all, remind you of who you are on the days when you forget. Walking alongside other conscious minds diminishes the illusion of loneliness. It shows that you are not the only one feeling, trying, searching, and this recognition heals, strengthens, transforms. Because when pain is shared, it dissolves faster. And when dreams are shared with those who believe, they grow stronger. The mastermind is also a mirror. It shows you where you are still limited. It challenges you to grow, to adjust your beliefs, to think beyond what you would think alone. And perhaps most importantly, it creates a field of accountability. Because when you promise something to yourself, you can postpone it. But when you promise something to a group you respect, you commit on another level, a deeper level, a level that honors not only what you want, but who you are becoming. And in this journey of becoming, there is a powerful energy that is often ignored, a force that, when redirected, can be the most creative and transformative fuel there is, an energy that, in its pure form, builds worlds, the transmutation of sexual energy. And that is what we will talk about now, the alchemy of vital energy, transmutation of sexual energy. There is a force within the human being that cannot be ignored, a raw, pulsating, creative energy. Sexual energy, often misunderstood, is one of the most powerful expressions of our vitality. It is not just a physical impulse, it is an inexhaustible source of creativity, magnetism, presence. When contained without direction, it can become chaos, compulsion, distraction. But when transmuted, it transforms into a sacred fire that moves ideas, projects, realities. Napoleon Hill was one of the first thinkers to speak openly about this. He realized that the great minds he studied knew, even intuitively, how to redirect this energy towards greater goals. They transformed physical desire into focus. They transformed need into purpose. They raised the pulse of the body to the frequency of fulfillment. And with that, they created, led, and manifested with intensity. The transmutation of sexual energy is not repression. It is not denial of desire. It is elevation. It is recognizing the power of what you feel and, instead of giving this force to the immediate impulse, channeling it into something more lasting. When this energy rises, it clears the mind. It increases intuition. It increases the force of attraction. It makes you more present, more magnetic, more aligned with your mission. That is why, during the 47 days of this journey, the way you deal with your impulses also directly influences your ability to manifest, because everything is energy. And this energy needs direction. The decision to transform this power into conscious creation is one of the greatest expressions of spiritual self-control and emotional intelligence. Over time, you begin to notice that this redirected force gives you more presence in dialogues, more depth in ideas, more persistence in actions. You begin to act less out of need and more out of clarity. And this changes your field, because whoever controls their most intense energy also controls their manifestation. This internal alchemy is silent but visible. It is reflected in your posture, your gaze, your voice. It reconfigures how the world responds to you. And for this process to be even more powerful, you need to understand that true transformation happens in the subconscious. It is the one that commands. It is the one that accepts. It is the one that manifests. And that is why we now enter one of the deepest pillars of this entire journey, the subconscious. The subconscious. There is a part of you that is always listening, always feeling, always recording, even when you don't realize it. This invisible place is the subconscious. It doesn't argue with your desires. It doesn't argue with your logic. It simply accepts what you repeat with emotion. And from there, it shapes your life. Like a garden that welcomes every seed, good or bad, what you cultivate frequently will flourish. Napoleon Hill recognized the subconscious as the field where thoughts become reality. He understood that it is not enough to want something consciously if, at the deepest level, you carry contrary beliefs. If you desire prosperity, but mentally repeat that everything is difficult, the subconscious does not fulfill your desire. It fulfills your vibration because it does not listen to words. It listens to energy. It responds to the emotion that supports the idea. That is why the reprogramming process does not happen by force. It happens through loving repetition, through continuous presence, by choosing daily to affirm, visualize, and feel what you desire as if it were already part of who you are. Over time, the subconscious begins to accept this new frequency, and when it does, the world begins to reflect it. But there is something even deeper. The subconscious is also the space where old memories, traumas, and unresolved pain remain active. That is why, sometimes, even with all the practices, something still seems to get stuck. And this stuckness is not a failure. It is an invitation. It is a sign that there is something asking to be looked at, welcomed, and reinterpreted. Because only what is accepted can be transformed. Connecting with the subconscious is also an act of courage, of diving into your own patterns, not to blame yourself, but to free yourself. Because every belief you bring from the past can be rewritten with intention. Every automatic thought can be reprogrammed with presence. And when this happens, when the subconscious begins to vibrate in tune with your conscious desire, you become an unshakable creative force. This internal field, so deep, is directly connected to something even greater, a transmitter, a receiver, a subtle system that captures thoughts, frequencies, intentions, the brain, and it is through it that the invisible communicates with the physical world. That is why we now move on to the next pillar, the brain. The brain. Within you, there is an antenna, a living structure that not only processes information, but also emits and receives frequencies. This antenna is the brain. Much more than a physical organ, the brain is the link between what you think and what you attract, between what you imagine and what begins to organize itself around you. It is a vibrational station, and like every station, it needs to be clearly tuned in to capture and transmit the correct signals. Napoleon Hill understood that the human brain is a transmitter of thought, but not just any thought, of thoughts imbued with emotion, intention, faith. It is these thoughts that have enough strength to impact the subtle field where reality is shaped. Neutral, random, or automatic thoughts do not have the same power. That is why the quality of what you think every day matters as much as the intensity of what you desire. The brain shapes itself according to the stimuli it receives. It creates pathways, neural pathways. And the more you repeat certain patterns, whether positive or negative, the more these pathways become stronger. This is how habits are formed, how reactions become automatic, how the mind begins to operate on autopilot mode. But this process, although unconscious, can be consciously changed. Neuroscience has already proven what ancient spiritual masters have always intuited. You can reprogram your brain. You can create new thought circuits. You can transform the way you react to life. You can stop repeating old pains and start responding with new possibilities. But to do this, you need constant intention. You need to nourish the brain with images, words, ideas, and emotions that are aligned with what you want to experience. The brain is also the space where intuitions manifest, where signals are decoded, where insights emerge from nothing, and at the same time, from everything. Because when you are aligned, the brain becomes a channel. It receives information that is beyond rationality. It opens to what Hill called the sixth sense, a silent wisdom that whispers the next step, even when the path still seems dark. And it is precisely to this whisper that we are going now, to this invisible place that, when listened to, becomes your greatest guide. The sixth sense. The sixth sense. There are times when something simply reveals itself, without logic, without explanation, a sudden feeling that something is right, an unexpected impulse that guides you to a choice that changes everything, a hunch that is confirmed, an idea that emerges in the silence and clarifies a path that seemed closed. This silent but powerful phenomenon is what Napoleon Hill called the sixth sense, a form of intuitive intelligence that goes beyond linear reasoning, a direct connection with universal intelligence. The sixth sense does not shout, it whispers. It speaks when the mind is quiet, when the heart is receptive, when the body is not anxious for answers, but available to listen. And that is why it is so often ignored. Because we live in a society addicted to proof, control, and logic. But the soul does not work that way. The soul recognizes before it understands. And this ancient wisdom is available to everyone. All you need to do is be silent. Napoleon Hill recognized that the sixth sense manifests itself more intensely when you have already explored the other pillars. When the desire is clear, the faith is firm, the subconscious has been reprogrammed, and the brain is tuned in. It is as if the sixth sense were the culmination of the process, the voice of the invisible that confirms, now you are ready. It brings directions, warnings, opportunities, but it is only heard by those who have learned to listen to what is not said. This listening requires presence, and presence is one of the greatest spiritual riches that can be cultivated. Being present is being in contact with real life, with the now, with the subtle field where everything is formed before manifesting. It is in the present that the sixth sense speaks, not about what has passed, not about what will come, but about what is available at this moment, an invitation, an idea, a subtle perception that can change the course of everything. Trusting the sixth sense is also trusting yourself. It is accepting that there is a wisdom that lives within you, even if you've learned to doubt it. It is remembering that you are part of something greater, and that this something greater wants to communicate with you all the time, not with promises, but with signs, not with rules, but with vibrations, not with fear, but with direction. And when you start to follow this inner direction, something inside you changes. But inevitably, something outside of you begins to resist, because there are internal forces that still operate in fear. Old, hidden, disguised fears. And to continue moving forward, you need to look at them clearly. You need to recognize them and release them. That is why we now enter one of the most profound and liberating points of this journey. The 6 ghosts of fear. The 6 ghosts of fear. There are fears that scream, and there are fears that whisper behind the most rational thoughts. These are the ones that sabotage, that interrupt processes, that postpone decisions, that distort perceptions. Napoleon Hill called them ghosts because they are invisible, but profoundly influential. They have no form, but they shape behaviors. There are 6 of them, and almost all of us at some point have been guided by them without realizing it. The fear of poverty. It manifests itself as chronic scarcity, constant worry about the future, attachment to what no longer nourishes. This fear limits the flow of life. It closes doors before they can even open. Because where there is panic about losing, there is no room for receiving. It is not just financial, it is vibrational. Fear of criticism. This traps human beings in the expectations of others. It makes you live trying to please, avoid judgment, be accepted. And in this, you distance yourself from yourself. You stop daring. You stop expressing yourself. The fear of criticism weakens the voice of the soul. And the more you censor yourself on the inside, the more the world silences you on the outside. Fear of illness. It paralyzes. It makes every sensation in the body be read as a threat. It drains vital energy. It creates constant tension. This fear blocks healing because it prevents the body from relaxing, and the body only regenerates when it is at peace. The fear of illness disconnects you from the natural power of self-regulation that your body possesses. Fear of losing someone. It is born from the illusion of possession, from the idea that we need to control in order to guarantee love. But love that needs to be controlled is not love. It is attachment. This fear prevents true connections because where there is fear of loss, there is resistance to giving oneself completely, and all resistance blocks the flow of life. Fear of old age. It is subtle but constant. It appears in the attempt to deny time, in the refusal to accept cycles, in the frantic search for eternal youth. This fear hides the wisdom that maturity brings. It prevents you from celebrating who you are becoming, and without this celebration, aging becomes a burden, not an honor. The fear of death, perhaps the deepest of all. The fear of disappearing, of not having left a mark, of not having lived enough. But when looked at with presence, this fear dissolves. Because death, like life, is part of the flow. And whoever learns to accept death learns to truly live, learns to value the now, to move with more intention, to love with more surrender. All these fears operate like silent currents, but when acknowledged, they lose strength. Consciousness illuminates what fear hides. And with light, there is freedom. Freeing yourself from these ghosts does not mean not feeling fear. It means no longer being guided by it. It means choosing the truth, even when it scares you. Choosing love, even when it requires vulnerability. Choosing to continue, even when the shadow tries to return. And this choice requires inner strength, a strength that comes from the center, that comes from the ability to look at yourself and say, I am responsible for what I feel, what I think, what I cultivate. This strength has a name, self-discipline, and it is what awaits us now, the importance of self-discipline. There is a silent power in keeping the word you give yourself. A type of inner integrity that does not seek applause or recognition, but that sustains everything you want to build. Self-discipline is not rigidity. It is not punishment. It is self-love in the form of constancy. It is saying yes to what really matters, even when the most impulsive part of you wants to take the shortcut. Napoleon Hill saw self-discipline as one of the indispensable foundations of success. Because without it, desire weakens, focus is dispersed, and energy is lost. It is not enough to dream. You need to sustain the dream with aligned attitudes. You have to wake up every day and make choices that honor what you say you want, even if no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. Self-discipline is transformative because it reorganizes your time, your attention, your body, your mind. It teaches you to do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. It strengthens your decision-making muscle. It creates space for something new to take hold. And over time, it stops being an effort and becomes natural. You no longer need to force yourself. You become the kind of person who naturally acts in accordance with what you want to live. But you have to understand, self-discipline is not rigidity without a soul. It also includes pausing, listening, and kindness. It is knowing when to move forward and when to retreat, when to insist and when to rest, when to say yes and when to say no. It is a dynamic alignment between will and wisdom, between action and presence, between strength and fluidity. And when you begin to live with this kind of internal order, something profound happens. You leave the chaos of reactivity and enter the clarity of conscious creation. You stop repeating cycles. You begin to plant intentionally. And what is planted with intention grows with power, because life respects those who respect themselves. This vibrational order created by self-discipline opens a new field, a field where your energy begins to attract that which is in resonance with it. And that is when life begins to respond, not as a coincidence, but as a consequence. And this response has a name that many know, but few understand deeply: the law of attraction. It is to this magnetic field that we are going now. The law of attraction. There is a subtle intelligence operating silently at every moment. It does not judge. It does not analyze. It does not reward or punish. It simply reflects. It reflects what you vibrate, what you believe, what you sustain in thought, in emotion, in presence. This intelligence is the law of attraction. Much more than a popular concept, it is one of the fundamental laws of life. Everything that exists vibrates, and everything that vibrates attracts that which resonates. Napoleon Hill, even without directly using this name, understood the essence of this law. He showed that the mind, when impregnated with emotion, desire, and intention, becomes a magnetic field that begins to bring closer that which is in tune. And this happens all the time, with or without awareness. Therefore, becoming aware of what you are emitting is the first step to changing what you are receiving. The law of attraction is not magic in the childish sense. It does not respond to requests made in haste or anxiety. It does not respond to desperation. It responds to coherence, to sustained vibration, to inner certainty. It doesn't bring what you want intellectually. It brings what you already feel is real, what you believe is possible, what you experience internally, as if it already is. That's why the work is not about trying to change the world. It's about changing the internal field, because when the field changes, the world responds. This change begins in the way you think, feel, act, in the type of emotion you feed, in the type of conversation you have with yourself, in the way you relate to others, with time, with silence. Attraction is a consequence. You don't force it, you allow it. You align yourself. And when you are aligned, what is yours finds its way, not because you shouted louder, but because you were silent enough to hear the call. And this call often repeats itself in the form of routine, in small daily rituals that reinforce who you are becoming. Because deep down, what shapes destiny the most are not grand gestures. They are habits. And that is exactly why we now come to another fundamental pillar, the importance of habit. Because what you do repeatedly builds, brick by brick, the reality you live. The importance of habit. There is an almost invisible force that shapes everything you experience. It doesn't shout. It doesn't surprise. It simply repeats. And by repeating, it builds. Day after day, silently. This force is habit. Small actions, small choices, small thoughts that by repeating themselves so often become your identity. And it is this identity that creates your reality. Napoleon Hill understood that success is not born from extraordinary moments. It is born from daily discipline, from habits that, when cultivated, become part of who you are. You don't have to think twice about breathing. You don't have to remember to brush your teeth. These behaviors have been integrated. And in the same way, any new vibration, any new mental or emotional pattern can also be integrated if repeated with intention. The great trap of the mind is to believe that only what is great transforms. But it is habit that sustains greatness. It is habit that keeps the flame of a desire alive, that prepares the body to receive, that anchors the mind in a new state of being. Because without aligned habits, energy disperses, faith weakens, manifestation dissolves before it even takes shape. Habit is the root of constancy, and constancy is what makes the invisible visible. When you repeat an aligned act, no matter how small it seems, you are telling the universe, "This is important to me." You are reaffirming your commitment. And the field responds to this with movement, with synchronicity, with openness. But habit also requires awareness, because the same power that builds can imprison. Negative habits also operate with force. They also shape. They also attract. That is why change begins with observation. What do you repeat daily that no longer serves you? What needs to be stopped? What needs to be started, even if little by little? Transforming a habit is not about changing everything at once. It is about changing something continuously. It is about building new energetic routines. It is about transforming everyday life into a space for creation. It is about making your life a spiritual practice disguised as normality. Because it is in the repetition of what seems common that the soul finds space to flourish. And when your habits begin to vibrate with lightness, presence, and intention, you realize that it is not only what you do that changes, it is what you feel. Because emotion is the fuel of everything. Emotion is the engine, and it is to this vibrational force that we are going now. The force of emotion. The force of emotion. Every creation begins with a thought, but it is emotion that gives it life. Emotion is the breath that transforms an idea into movement. It is the vibration that transforms an intention into reality. Without emotion, a thought is just an image. With emotion, it becomes a magnetic field, a silent call that echoes in the universe and attracts everything that resonates with it. Napoleon Hill understood that the most powerful desires are those that are accompanied by intense emotion, not uncontrolled emotion, but emotion that is felt, channeled, present. When you desire something with true emotion, your vibration rises, your body aligns, your field expands, you become one with what you desire. Emotion is also an indicator. It shows where you are vibrating. When something moves you, it is because it touched an inner truth. When something bothers you, it is because it found a point that needs healing. Emotion reveals where your energy is. And when you learn to observe this without judgment, you begin to understand what is really creating your reality. But there is an essential detail. Emotion needs to be cultivated, not forced. It is not about faking joy or hiding sadness. It is about recognizing what you feel and using it as an impulse for alignment. It is about transforming pain into strength, longing into intention, fear into movement. Emotion is the raw material of the soul, and when used consciously, it becomes fuel for conscious creation. The repetition of aligned thoughts, when associated with sincere emotion, reprograms the subconscious much more quickly. The brain does not differentiate between what is real and what is emotionally experienced with intensity. Therefore, visualizing your dream with true emotion is not only beautiful, it is powerful. Because you are creating, in your internal chemistry, the experience before it even exists in the physical world. And when this emotion is linked to a greater purpose, everything makes more sense. You don't just vibrate for what you want to have. You vibrate for who you are becoming, for what you are leaving in the world, for the transformation you are allowing in yourself. And this purpose, this deep reason behind what you seek, is what sustains the journey on good days and on difficult days. That is why we now approach one of the most sacred pillars of this journey, the importance of a defined purpose, the absolute clarity of where you want to go, and even more so, why. The importance of a defined purpose. There is a force that cuts through all doubts, an inner direction that continues to vibrate, even when everything around seems confusing. This force is purpose, and when it is clear, deep, and true, it becomes a beacon, a center of gravity that organizes choices, thoughts, emotions. Napoleon Hill called this a defined purpose, the non-negotiable clarity of what you want, the vibrational certainty of why you want it. Many people know what they want, but few know why they want it. And it is this why that sustains the path when enthusiasm fades. It is what keeps the flame burning when the world grows cold. Because purpose is not just an objective, it is a meaning, a greater reason, something that goes beyond reward, beyond recognition, beyond results. When the purpose is defined, each action gains meaning. Each small step becomes part of something bigger. Distractions lose strength. Doubts diminish. Decisions become simpler. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you stop negotiating with what does not take you where you want to go. You begin to move with integrity. You begin to inhabit your own path. A clear purpose also strengthens your presence. It anchors you in the now. It transforms routine into ritual. It gives soul to the simplest tasks, because you know that you are building something that matters. And this feeling of inner importance generates a vibration that the universe recognizes. It understands that you are not just asking for something, you are becoming something. But to define a true purpose, silence is needed. It is necessary to listen beyond superficial desire. It is necessary to ask, what does my soul want to express in this world? Who am I becoming by pursuing this dream? How does my achievement transform not only me, but the field around me? When these questions are answered honestly, purpose emerges. It is not invented, it is remembered. And with this purpose vibrating in every cell, a new impulse arises. A new urgency, not of anxiety, but of active presence. An urgency that invites action. Because a purpose without action becomes frustration. And that is why now, with everything that has been built up until now, we open ourselves to the moment in which everything begins to take shape. Immediate action. Immediate action. There is a moment when the dream demands more than intention. It demands a step. It demands a gesture. It demands a decision embodied in the present. This moment is now, and it is in this moment that the energy truly begins to move. Napoleon Hill observed accurately that people who achieve great things are those who act, even without having everything ready, even when they are afraid, even without knowing exactly what the result will be, because they understand that action is the language of commitment. Immediate action is not a rush. It is not a rush. It is a response to the inner call, a vibrational affirmation that says, I am here, I am ready, I am moving. When you act from an aligned state, you do not just do something. You generate movement in the field. You send a clear frequency that you are willing to be an active part of what you want to experience. Many wait to feel complete confidence before acting, but the truth is that in many cases, confidence only arises after action, after you take a risk, after you take the first step, because each step generates experience. And each experience, when embraced, strengthens faith. Not theoretical faith, but lived faith. Faith that is born of the body in motion. Immediate action also breaks cycles of inertia. It disarms procrastination. It interrupts the pattern of later. It cuts the invisible thread that keeps life suspended between desire and achievement. Because every real change requires involvement. It requires presence. It requires a gesture, however small, that tells the universe, I am here and I choose. But acting does not mean doing everything. It means starting with what you can, with what you have, where you are. It means abandoning the illusion of perfection and embracing the process. It means trusting that each small movement, when done with intention, has power. And this power adds up. It multiplies. It manifests. Action is the point where the invisible becomes visible, where what was just vibration begins to take shape. And when this form is born from an aligned field, it carries with it a power that no strategy on its own could generate, because it is born from the heart. It is born from purpose. It is born from the being that you are becoming. And now, after going through all these pillars, it is time to return to the center, to integrate everything, to take a deep breath and recognize the depth of this journey. It is time to conclude not with an end, but with continuity, to make room for reflection on the 47 days, to honor the transformation that has begun, and to remember that this path is only the beginning. So let's move on to the conclusion. Integrating the principles for a lasting transformation. Integrating the principles for a lasting transformation. After so many steps, silence takes on another meaning. It is no longer absence. It is expanded presence, an internal space where everything that has been absorbed begins to fit together. Because true transformation does not happen only the moment you hear an idea. It happens in the silent repetition that comes after, in the echo that reverberates in your decisions, in your habits, in the way you begin to see yourself. During this journey, you have not only heard about Napoleon Hill's principles, you have walked through them, You have felt each one with your body, mind, and heart. You have allowed yourself to delve into truths that are often challenging, but precisely because of that, they are liberating. And now, at this point of integration, it is time to understand that the end of one cycle is, in fact, the gateway to the beginning of another. The 47 days are an invitation, an intentional cycle of vibrational reprogramming, a necessary time for new mental paths to consolidate, new habits to establish, new emotions to take root, not as an imposition, but as a choice, as a loving decision to align with who you really are and with what you came to manifest in this world. You may notice subtle changes, a new type of thinking, a firmer presence in the face of difficulties, a more compassionate look at your history. Perhaps you feel that something has been removed, something has been cleared, and that now there is space. Space to receive, space to be. Because that is the nature of awakening, not to add more, but to remove what was preventing it. And even though these 47 days come to an end, the journey continues. The consciousness acquired can no longer be forgotten. The vibration access does not disappear. It stays with you. It grows with you. It transforms you into someone who no longer seeks power outside, but who recognizes that everything is already within. W. Clement Stone, following in the footsteps of Napoleon Hill, reaffirmed that a positive mental attitude and persistent action are the two wings of any true flight. And now, with these wings strengthened, you can move forward, not in a hurry, but with presence, not with expectation, but with confidence. Because what the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And what the soul holds with truth, reality responds with form. The cycle ends here, but the field remains open, ready to be lived, ready to be filled with new versions of yourself. And if this video touched your soul at some point, remember, it was not by chance. Because when the soul is ready, the message arrives. And you have come this far. That says it all. The importance of continuity. When a cycle ends, there is always the silent temptation to relax, to let the pace slow down, to believe that the hardest part is over. But it is precisely at this point that the transformation either consolidates or falls apart, because true change is not an event. It is a new state of being, a field that needs to be maintained, nurtured, remembered, not with excessive effort, but with conscious presence. Continuity is what differentiates those who experience a momentary awakening from those who embody a new path. Because the 47 days opened doors. They revealed patterns. They reorganized your vibration, but the world around you remains the same. And for your reality to transform, you need to sustain this new frequency even when everything around you still vibrates at the old one. This requires loving vigilance, not paranoia, but a type of compassionate attention. The awareness that everything learned here can be applied to every simple gesture of daily life, to the way you start the day, to the way you react to the unexpected, for the silence between one action and another. Continuity is in these spaces, between the lines, in the way you treat yourself, respect yourself, rebuild yourself, whenever necessary. W. Clement Stone said that a positive mental attitude is a habit, not an isolated event, and habits are only formed through repetition, with daily choices, with renewed decision. You don't need to do everything again. You just need to keep the light that was lit inside you burning. Nourish it with practices that make sense, with environments that elevate you, with people who remind you of who you are when the world tries to make you forget. Continuity is not linear. There will be days of tiredness. There will be detours. But what changes everything is the way you come back, how you reconnect, how you remember. Because this memory, that there is something greater guiding you, that there is a dream vibrating inside you, that there is an energy responding to your frequency, this memory is enough to keep the path alive. And if the path is alive, the journey never gets lost. It only transforms. It only deepens. It only invites you to a new level of surrender, of trust, of truth. And this new level begins now, the very moment you choose to continue, even without guarantees, even without total clarity, only with the inner certainty that your soul knows where it is going. In the next and final part, we will seal this field with a vibration of empowerment and spiritual clarity, a conclusion that does not end, but consecrates, that does not close, but consents, a final call, gentle and firm, so that everything that was felt here continues to flourish in each breath of your life. Connection with W. Clement Stone. Among all the voices that echoed Napoleon Hill's wisdom, there is one that not only heard it, but lived it. W. Clement Stone was more than a disciple. He was an extension, the body and presence of a philosophy applied with intensity, integrity, and action. While Hill decoded success as a science of thought, Stone put this thought into practice as a lifestyle. And it is in this connection between theory and experience that one of the greatest riches of this journey lies. Stone understood that a positive mental attitude was more than optimism. It was vibrational alignment with purpose, a daily choice to tune in to what you want to experience, even when everything seems challenging. For him, success was not reserved for the most intelligent, but for the most consistent, for those who choose every day to act with faith, even without guarantees, to love, even with scars, to create, even when nothing is ready. This attitude aligns perfectly with everything you have gone through in these 47 days, because it is not just about understanding concepts, it is about living them with your body, with your voice, with your feet on the ground. It is about repeating the alignment until it becomes nature, until the vibration of confidence, clarity, and presence is so embedded in you that the world around you can no longer shape who you are. W. Clement Stone did not just talk about persistence. He was persistence incarnate, aligned actions every day, a spirit that said yes to life, even when faced with no circumstances. And that is what this final moment asks of you, that you choose to sustain what has been awakened, that you recognize that this is not the end of the journey, it is the maturation of a new level of being. There is something sacred in getting this far. And there is something even more powerful in continuing from here on out, because now you carry a vibrational language that can no longer be undone, a field that has been activated and that only needs to be kept alive. And it will be, in practice, in silence, in gesture, in commitment to who you are becoming. Next, we will seal all of this with a call to the soul, a final breath of empowerment, a vibration of recognition and choice. The definitive conclusion, the subtle seal of a journey that, although it ends in words, truly begins in the space between one breath and the next. A call to action. Getting this far was not a coincidence. This video found you at the exact time your soul was ready to remember. Remember who you are, what you came to do, the power you carry, even on days when everything seems to fall apart. Because something inside you chose to listen, chose to dive in, chose, even without knowing how, to take another step towards what is true. This is not the end of a piece of content. It is the birth of a choice. The choice to align your thoughts with your faith, your words with your vision, your actions with your purpose. Because what you seek is not out there waiting for something to change. It is inside, waiting for you to remember, for you to say yes, for you to stop postponing your own truth. The call now is simple, but profound. Keep this vibration alive. Sustain this field. Return to this space whenever you need to, not as if you were starting over from scratch, but as if you were reconnecting with the source. Because the soul does not forget. And everything that was touched here remains within you. You have the right to manifest a life in tune with your heart. You have the power to transform patterns that seemed fixed. You have the calling to live with intention, with clarity, with faith. And this 47-day journey is just the beginning of a cycle that expands toward its fullest version. What the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But what the soul chooses, the universe confirms. And if you felt, at some point in this journey, that these words came from a greater place, then perhaps, deep down, you already know you are ready. And now, in the silence that comes after the words, something is organized within you. a new vibration, a new alignment, a new story. That does not start tomorrow. That does not depend on anything external. It starts now, in you, by you, for you, because you remembered. And those who remember never go back to sleep.